Hey guys, happy Thursday. It was great seeing all of you this week on our Google Meet office hours and chatting with you. I'm pretty sure all of us checked in with most all students, so that's awesome. If you did not check in via email or Remind or on Google Classroom or during those meet times, we will be reaching out to you tomorrow. And I'm going to be at the school tomorrow, so I will be calling. I think I only have 3 families. I will be calling you from the school tomorrow just to check in and hopefully set up a better line of communication and ways to get updates. Please ignore my sniffling today. My allergies have kicked in full force today, so my eyes are itchy and watery, and I've sneezed a ton, and I'm just tired. So I apologize for that in advance. When we ended off on the last chapter, Anne Marie found her mom, who had broken her ankle because she twisted it on a root trying to get back after dropping the Rosens off to Uncle Henrik's boat. And then when Anne Marie got her up to the house and up to the step, they realized that the packet that Peter had given to Mr. Rosen had fallen out of Mr. Rosen's pocket when he tripped on the step. And Anne Marie has to get it to Uncle Henrik as quickly as possible. She has to run. And she doesn't know what's in the packet, but she had to put it in a basket with like lunch and stuff to try and get it there. And she said, her mother said that if anybody stops you, you must pretend like you're a silly, empty-headed little girl taking lunch to a fisherman, a foolish uncle who forgot his bread and cheese. So now we are on chapter 14, and it is called On the Dark Path. Only now, entering the woods on the footpath, did Anne Marie realize how cold the dawn was. She had watched and helped earlier as the others donned sweaters, jackets, and coats, and she had peered into the night following them with her eyes as they moved silently off, bulky in their garments, blankets in their arms. But she wore only a light sweater over her cotton dress. Though the October day later would be warmed by sunlight, now it was gray, chilly, and damp. She shivered. The path curved, and she could no longer look behind her and see the clearing with the farmhouse outlined against the pale sky and the lightening meadow beyond. Now there were only the dark woods ahead. Underfoot, the path, latticed with thick roots, hidden under the fallen leaves, was invisible. She felt her way with her feet, trying not to stumble. The handle of the straw basket scratched her arm through her sweater. She shifted it and tried to run. She thought of the story she had often told Christy as they cuddled in bed at night. Once upon a time there was a little girl, she told herself silently, who had a beautiful red cloak. Her mother had made it for her. She wore it so often that everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. Christy would always interrupt there. Why was it called a Red Riding Hood? Christy would ask. Why didn't they just call her Little Red Cloak? Well, it had a hood that covered her head. She had beautiful curls like you, Christy. Maybe someday Mama will make you a coat with a hood and cover your curls and keep you warm. But why, Christy would ask, was it a riding hood? Was she riding a horse? Maybe she had rode a horse sometimes, but not in this story. Now stop interrupting every minute. Anne Marie smiled, feeling her way through the dark, remembering how Christy always interrupted stories to ask questions. Often, she just wanted to make the story last longer. The story continued. One day, the little girl's mother said, I want you to take a basket of food to your grandmother. She is sick in bed. Come, let me tie your red cloak. The grandmother lived deep in the woods, didn't she? Christy would ask. In the dangerous woods where wolves lived. Anne Marie heard a small noise, a squirrel perhaps, or a rabbit scampering nearby. She paused, stood still on the path, and smiled again. Christy would have been frightened. She would have grabbed Anne Marie's hand and said, a woof! But Anne Marie knew that these words were not like the woods in the story. There were no wolves or bears or tigers, none of the beasts that populated Christy's vivid imagination. She hurried on. Still, they were very dark, these woods, and Anne Marie had never followed this path in the dark before. She had told her mother she would run, and she tried. Here the path turned. She knew the turning well, though it seemed different in the dark. If she turned to the left, it would take her to the road, out where it would be lighter, wider, more traveled, but more dangerous too. She could see her on the road at this time of dawn. Other fishermen would be on the road, hurrying to their boats for the long day, and there might be soldiers. She turned to the right and headed deep into the woods. It is why Mama and Peter needed those to guide those strangers here, the Rosens and the others. A wrong turn would have taken them to danger. So Little Red Riding Hood carried the basket of food and hurried along through the woods. It was a lovely morning and birds were singing. Little Red Riding Hood sang along too as she walked. Sometimes she changed that part of the story, telling to Christy. Sometimes it was raining or even snowing in the woods. Sometimes it was evening with long, frightening shadows, so that Christy, listening, would snuggle closely and wrap her arms around Anne-Marie. But now, telling it to herself, she wanted sunlight and the bird song. Here the path widened and flattened, and it was a place where the woods opened up on one side and curved beside the meadow at the edge of the sea. Here she could run, and she did. Here, in daylight, there would be cows in the meadow, and on summer afternoons, Anne-Marie would always stop by the fence and hold out handfuls of grass, which the curious cows would take with their rough tongues. Here, her mother had told her, Mama would always stop too, as the children walking to school, her dog, Trofast, would wriggle under the fence and run about in the meadow, barking excitedly, trying to chase the cows, who always ignored him. The meadow was empty now, and colorless in the half-light. She could hear the churning sea beyond, and see the wash of daylight to the east over Sweden. She ran as fast as she could, searching with her eyes for the place ahead where the path would re-enter the woods in its final segment, which led to town. Here the bushes were overgrown, and it was difficult to see the path. But she found the entrance, beside the high blueberry bushes. How she often had stopped here in late summer to pick a handful of the sweet berries. Her hands and mouth would be blue afterwards, and Mama always laughed when she came home. Now it was dark again, and the trees and bushes closed around her, and she had to move more slowly, though she still tried to run. Anne-Marie thought of Mama, her ankle so swollen and her face so pained. She hoped Mama would call the doctor by now. The local doctor was an old man, brusque and businesslike, though with kind eyes. He had come to the farmhouse several times during the summers in the past, his battered car noisy on the dirt road. He had come when Christy, a tiny baby, had been sick and wailing with an earache. And he had come when Lisa had spilled hot grease cooking breakfast and burned her hand. Anne-Marie turned again as the path divided once more. The left fork would take her directly to the village. It was the way they had come from the train, and the way Mama had walked to school as a girl. But Anne-Marie turned right, heading now toward the harbor side, where the fishing boats lay at anchor. She had often come this way before, too, sometimes at the end of the afternoon to pick out the Ingeborg, Uncle Henrik's boat, from the many returning, and to watch him and his helpers unload the day's catch of slippery, shimmering herring still flopping in their containers. Even now, with the boats in the harbor ahead, empty fish, preparing to leave for the day's fishing, she could smell the oily, salty scent of herring, which always remained in the air here. It wasn't far now. It was almost getting lighter. She ran as fast as she had run at school in the Friday foot races, almost as fast as she had run on the Copenhagen sidewalk the day the soldier had stopped her with his call of "Halt!" Anne-Marie continued the story in her head. Suddenly, as Little Red Riding Hood walked through the woods, she heard a noise. She heard a rustling in the bushes. "A wolf," Christy would always say, shivering with fearful delight. "I know it's going to be the wolf." Anne-Marie always tried to prolong this part, to build up the suspense and tantalize her sister. She didn't know what it was. She stopped on the path and listened. Something was following her in the bushes. Little Red Riding Hood was very, very, very frightened. She would stop and would stay silent for a moment, and beside her in the bed she could feel Christy holding her breath. Then Anne-Marie would go on in a low, dread-filled voice. She heard a growl. Anne-Marie stopped suddenly and stood still on the path. There was a turn immediately ahead, beyond it, and she knew as she rounded the turn, she would see the landscape open to the sea. The woods would be behind her there, and ahead of her would be the harbor, and docks and countless fishing boats. Very soon it would be noisy there, with engines starting, fishermen calling to one another, and gulls crying. But she had heard something else. She heard bushes rustling ahead. She heard footsteps, and she was certain it was not her imagination. She heard a low growl. Cautiously, she took a step forward, and another. She approached the turn in the path, and the noises continued. Then they were there, in front of her, 4 armed soldiers. With them, straining at taut leashes, were 2 large dogs, their eyes glittering and their lips curled. And that's where we are going to stop today. We will read chapter 15 tomorrow. Well, I hope you guys have a good day. I hope you get out this weekend. It's supposed to warm up a little bit. It's not very warm today, but it's supposed to get nicer, so I hope you get outside. And I hope you are having some fun at home, spending time with family. Please make sure that you are checking Google Classroom and your email every single day. Start getting in the habit of that, because that is where all of us fifth grade teachers will be posting things. On top of that, your specials teachers have also we've added them into our Google Classroom. Sorry, I had a brain fart. We've added your specials teachers to our Google Classroom, so they will be posting things as well. I know Miss Jamaluski has a slideshow that she will be posting, and I know Miss Janetsky has already posted, or Miss Jeanette, excuse me, has already posted stuff for Spanish. So make sure that you are looking out for some of those things, that you're checking that daily. If you have any questions, please email us or message us on Google Classroom, whatever works best. If you did not meet or reach out to us this week, be prepared for a phone call tomorrow. I hope you guys have a great day. Love you, miss you lots.